this fella punched me in the stomach, a very senior left back, lifted me off the ground. Tony saw it. The ball went somewhere near the bloke 5 minutes after, and Tony was all over the fella and said, "Have you ever touched my mate again, I'll kill you."
Ian, you're a full-blooded Bristolian. You grew up there, you were bred there, you played for Bristol Rovers 3 spells, and you've managed them as well. But going back to when you were younger, when you were first growing up, how did you choose who to support at Bristol Rovers and Bristol City? Because I know your dad took you to a couple of games, didn't he? Of each team.
My dad would take me anywhere he could to watch all different levels, because he tried to inspire me to have no limits to how good I thought I could be. So he showed me the very best. Bristol City had some really good players at that time. But it all started when I was 9 years old. I played a trial match for the county. I got brought off, and I'm not too ashamed to say I was crying on the side. And this Bristol Rovers scout came over, a fella called Joe Davis, said, "What's the matter with you, son? You'll be fine, you'll be captain." I said, "What's your name? We want to train you." So Bristol City came over as well. So my dad made appointments for them to come to our house. And before they came, typical him, he said, "Right, son, I want you to choose one of these 2 clubs to go training with on a Tuesday and a Thursday night." I went, "All right." So anyway, first lot came in and took one look around our council house and said that they want to give me schoolboy forms, they want to give me apprenticeship forms, and a guarantee of 1 year pro. They thought I was brilliant. And
how old were you at the time?
I was 9.
9, yeah.
And they looked at mum and dad and said, "And by the way, you'll never have to buy him another pair of boots. Mr. and Mrs. Holloway will look after him." So out they went. In come the other fella called Gordon Bennett from Bristol Rovers. And he went, "My scout told me you were average." He said, "I want to offer you some training. And it's down to you. It's about how hard you work. How much do you want to be a player? Because I can't help you unless you do it yourself." So he went through the fact that I will give you first team coaches. I will do it. You better be on time. I will check your school because you might not make it. But, we've heard that you're average and we'll try and make you better. So Dad looked at me after they'd both gone and said, "What do you think?" And I went, "Well, how do they know how good I'm going to be?" He went, I said, "Well, I'd rather go with a fellow who said it's down to me." So that was Bristol Rovers. And that was the end of it, really. I felt they told me the truth. And all the other things were totally illegal as well, by the way. You couldn't sign those, but I didn't want any guarantees. So I found it pretty strange that was the case. So that's why I chose Rovers. And from that point on, I was tested every minute of every week of every month with Bristol Rovers' way of doing it.
And a lot of people obviously know about your managerial career and how successful you've been, but not so many people growing up maybe now know you as a player. How would you describe your playing style?
It's quite easy, really. I come from an era where as a midfield player, you had to be able to run forward and get back and do your defensive side as well as your attacking side. There was no such thing as a defensive midfielder. Midfielders were brought up. Normally there was 2 of us and 2 wingers, normally in a 4-4-2, and you had to get box to box and put your foot in and tackle. So not only just stand around and pass. So that was me, really. And I describe myself as there's 2 types of midfield player, in my opinion. There's piano carriers. In other words, if we're going to play a beautiful tune, I put the piano on the stage. And then I'd let Ray Wilkins sit down and play it because he was a musician, So really, I was the workaholic side of the midfield that you need, I'm not saying I'm anything like Kante because he's absolute genius and a World Cup winner, but his style of getting around, breaking things up, putting a foot in and passing it simple was my way of doing it, And I got to be honest, my Bristol Rovers have done some books about players in their past and it's fans' view of describing each player. I am so proud of what they said about me. They describe me as a workaholic fighting cock. I can't fault that. That is something that I am so proud of. I still chuckle now.
and you also play alongside another well-known manager, Tony Pulis. What was that like?
He was my protector. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw him play, but he was a midfield player who's had a really bad knee. And in fact, they told him when he was about 22, 23 that if he don't work on his inner thigh muscle there, that his knees were shot. So you're actually going to be finished. And he wouldn't have that. So I'd never seen anything like him. You know, he built like a tank. And we played Derby County once where this fella punched me in the stomach. A very senior left back lifted me off the ground. Tony saw it. The ball went somewhere near the bloke 5 minutes after, and Tony was all over the fella and said, "If you ever touch my mate again, I'll kill you." And I actually thought he had. You know, the bloke was carried off. You know, I mean, this is, you know, not modern stuff, but Tony was a fantastic teammate, person to look up to, absolute winner, born winner, you know, and someone that you would get energy from. No wonder he's been a brilliant manager in his lifetime. So, you know, it was a privilege to know him and know his family and his wife Debbie and his kids. And I'm godfather to one of his son Anthony. So,
could you tell us about the funny story about how Nigel Martin was discovered at Bristol Rovers?
Yeah, people, I don't know whether they believe it or not, but it was a normal training day. We were just getting ready to go out to train, and this fella turned up with a Tesco bag with some boots, and they were the oldest looking boots I've ever seen. Looks like he just found them in someone's attic, and he quite quietly said, I've come up for a trial. And one of our coaches said, "Well, who sent you?" And he went, "Oh, Vi Harris." Now, she was our tea lady, and she was on holiday down in Cornwall. He played for St. Blasey. She said, "Oh, you're really good. Go up to Bristol Rovers." Mentioned my name. Now, Vi had been with us for years and years, so we let him train. And to be fair, he was so good, our coach ran over and told Jerry, because Jerry was working with us first teamers at the time. We brought him over for a shooting session at the end, and we signed him on that. In the end, he took Tim Carter's place. Now, Tim Carter was a fantastic goalkeeper, but Nigel was just, you know, and he became the world's most expensive goalkeeper later on by going to Crystal Palace for £1 million.
Bristol derbies, you've played in quite a lot. You don't see them too many anymore, but at your time, they play each other quite often, and there was one particular clash.
You're talking about my favourite ever game.
I'll let you describe it, if you could take us through it.
Bristol City and us were vying. We were behind them at the time, and they had 3 chances to get promoted, and they lost each game. It was unusual. They should have done it. Then our game was called off a few months earlier, so we arranged it. They wanted to, right almost at the end. So, as by chance happened, if they won, they were champions. If we won, we'd go above them and we'd get promoted before them. So it was all on the line. Totally and utterly all on the line. The night before, I received a phone call because my name was in the phone book and my address was in the phone book. And they tried to threaten me and my family. It was Bristol City people on the end, telling me they're going to burn my house down, kill my kids. So I just refused to stop arguing with them. My wife would come down, "Come on. No, I'm not letting them win." And I told them it, and I was shouting it down the phone. So when we had walked in the dressing room, I said, "Jill, can I say something?" I told our lads about that phone call, and we were like men possessed. Absolutely. No one threatens our family. And thank them lads for doing that, because it helped us beat you.
3-0, and you got the penalty.
3-0, yeah, we won. Yeah, they had a great centre-half called Rob Newman, who was their captain, absolute talisman for them. Anytime Devon White got anywhere near him, it was so difficult to handle. And Devon scored 2. And then we go, Phil Purnell, our wide man, hit a shot. It was handballed on the line by Andy Llewellyn, and the whistle had gone. Now, the 2 previous games, I had taken a penalty in each game. And I used to discuss with my goalkeeper, who was brilliant at penalties, Brian Parkin, whether I should keep the same side. He went, "Oh, he'd have seen them, so stick it the same side." So we practiced the day before. So I was waiting, It was an extraordinarily long time because they were ripping our ground to bits at the far end. And I had to put the ball down, go in. And to be fair, I was never going to miss. Smacked it in, run back, hair all billowing in the wind. Still worried that we might let 4 in, but luckily for us, we did it.
And what was the significance of you? There's a picture of you at the end with a hat, and you're talking to to everyone present.
Yeah, that was a very, very sad story where a boy on his way home from school had ran past his mate, stepped out into the road and got hit and killed by a car. He was a big Rovers fan. It was his hat. I was his favourite player, and I took that hat with me every single match in my kit bag. We used to take our own stuff then, not spoilt like they are these days. And I took that hat out, cried my eyes out, and put it on my head because the boy was with us the whole time, you know, and we felt that as a team. We responded to that. Anytime there was pressure, we realised that all the lads knew, and you have to get this in your life where you're part of something, and Jerry made us like that at Rovers at the time, and we were fighting through adversity, and we came through it. But I had this thing, I always wanted to be somebody at Bristol Rovers who won promotion. There was a photo when I was growing up of a fella called Jackie Pitt, who was our groundsman, celebrating promotion. So I had this in my mind, I was going to do it. And sometimes when you get it in your mind, you do it.
Ian Holloway, the manager, you started off at Bristol Rovers. You were offered a 4-year deal as player manager in 1996, replacing John Ward. Is it true you signed a player's contract so you technically couldn't be sacked in those 4 years?
Yeah, I didn't realise how important that was at the time, you know, but players' contracts were blue, managers' contracts were white, and you could get treated like a manager with a white contract. Mine was a blue one, so they couldn't afford to, and the PFA wouldn't let them sack me in that way because I was still contracted to play. They gave me no extra money for being a manager, so I did 2 jobs for the price of 1. So really, I felt that helped me because the first season was a terrible start. I was learning and trying to learn on the foot, and things weren't going that well.
Did you previously coached in any capacity?
Not at all, no. No, so I was straight in the deep end.
And how did you get the respect of the players as a young manager? Because you're only 33 at the time.
Well, probably as a player, not as a manager, really, because I could still run better than nearly all of them. There's only one lad who could run like I could, a lad called Lockwood. And so I was still playing and still running and still training. But, you know, Gary Penrose was my best mate, and he was still playing, and I had him. But we had to save money at Rovers, so I was a player manager. Penny was a player assistant manager, and Phil Kite was goalkeeper coach and physio. So that's
He was on the touchline when you guys were playing?
One of us.
Yeah.
I never picked us. Well, very rarely did I pick us at the same time.
So I can't imagine this ever happening now, but at one stage when you took over, you invited a journalist down. You didn't like his comments in the paper. I think it was about a Bristol derby game, and you brought him down and made him speak in front of your players. Imagine that happening to like Henry Winter or someone now.
Let me tell you, he was a lovely fella, and I'm not going to mention it on here, but I read his match report. Now, at the time, City were always the biggest team, but we were doing really well. And we had Curtin and Roberts. The rest of my team wasn't being talked about. I had an immaculate backline that were absolutely fantastic. We played Bristol City. Those 2 were hopeless. On the day, for them, they were hopeless, right? The rest of my team were magnificent, particularly my captain, Andy Tilson, at the time. They didn't get a mention. The marks that they got wasn't very good, but in the match report, it said, if Bristol City had these 2 strikers, they'd be top of the league. Right? So I went absolutely berserk at this fella.
What, to ring him up?
I rang him up.
Yeah.
I said, I want you. And he went, what do you mean? I said, I need you down at my training ground to please explain to me why you put in that match report how Curtin and Roberts should be playing for Bristol City and should be top of the league after. That's a match report. You should have reported how bad they were on the day. And I want you to explain it to Mike. So anyway, he came down, tried to do it. I slaughtered him at turn.
In front of all the players?
Yeah, because you cannot say that
Petrified.
in a match report. If that was a bit on the back that he is talking about his opinion, totally different. You are paid to write a match report. That is not a match report. Tell those two that they were rubbish because they think I'm crazy.
Did you make him do that to their face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, why did you give him a 7 and him a 8 when my centre half should have had a 9 or a 10 and they should have got at least a 4 each because they were rubbish on the day. So don't make them think they're better than they actually are. And how dare you think that Bristol City are better than us? They haven't earned that right.
What were his reports like after that?
He left.
Oh my God.
He went to the television in the end. He's a lovely man. He still is now, but he was young and he was learning.
Yeah.
And so was I, but I could not. It's typical me. I had to say, hang on a minute, because I was trying to teach them centre forwards not to be selfish, to be team players, and he was making them look bigger than us.